Grant, one half of the Herdsman, coming to you today to talk to you about something rather unique. You see, over the past, I'd say 3 or 4 months, I have been putting off trying to do this one specific list about movies and television, and that is a list of the movies and TV shows that have made me cry, that have invested me enough in the story to have made me cry nearly every time that I see them. And I've been putting it off just because it's very, it's it's honestly kind of a hard list to come up with. It's a hard list to just show myself emotionally bare, but I respect you guys too much to not do that. So, with that said, there are only a couple other pointers to how this list works. One, it's in no particular order. It's not a this makes me cry the most, this makes me cry the least. And two, it has to have been a story which is not in itself emotionally manipulative. When you look at movies like Bridge to Terabithia or Old Yeller or Bambi or uh, what is it? Where the Red Fern Grows or My Dog Skip. When you look at those films, you don't actually have to be that invested in the story to cry at the moments that they want you to cry at. It's just an inherently sad thing. I mean, you almost have to be a monster not to cry at those moments. Now, these are stories in which they just make you cry because you get invested. A lot of these come from series, so that probably has something to do with it. But really, it's just such beautiful storytelling that it makes you cry. So with that said, and before I become too unintelligible, um, let's get started. Okay, so the first one is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, and this actually didn't used to be one until rather recently. And that is a scene. It is at the part of Goblet of Fire where he's just gotten away from Voldemort. And by the way, you're going to get a lot of spoilers for every one of these movies. Almost all of them have something very crucial, a plot point, so keep that in mind. Um, in Harry Potter Goblet of Fire, there is a scene where they're just coming back from having faced Voldemort, and one of the characters has died. And it's a very mixed bag of emotions because from the spectators, you see in the Goblet of Fire there is a audience at this point in the movie because getting the Goblet of Fire is an event, and there's a bunch of spectators. They're watching, expecting Harry or someone to win this Goblet of Fire, which Harry does, but when he comes back, the first thing you hear is the thud of one of the other dead competitors, Cedric Diggory. And everybody's cheering because they can't yet tell that someone has died. Then you hear a blood-curdling scream from one of the people there. And then after that, you hear Harry start to say, Voldemort's back, Voldemort's back. I couldn't leave him. Not there. And then you see Cedric's father, who is, up to that point, he's not been a big part of the story, but you just always felt love between him and his son whenever they were on screen together. And he says, "Get away from me, that's my son! That's my boy!" And it's such a heartbreaking scene. I I personally have had to deal with this. I haven't lost a son. I haven't yet had children or even dated. But my brother had committed suicide, and he was probably around the same age as the character. Or, yeah, actually, he was about the same age as the character. And so I know from just seeing it from my dad how heartbreaking this can be. And for that, and just for the story alone, I mean, I cried at this moment long before the tragedy of my brother's suicide happened. And that's why it's on this list, because it is, one, it's a beautiful film, and two, this just gets grief right. Nothing is overacted. The next part, and this is another thing about this list. Not all of these parts that make me cry are necessarily sad. A good majority of them are, but not all of them are things that make me sad. In the case of this next one, which comes from Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, it is one that actually makes me really, really happy. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, you see Hagrid, one of the... I guess he's one of those just characters that you meet early on, and he kind of gives off the gentle giant or friendly grandpa type of feeling. And given that I can't go into the whole detail of the movie, that would make all of this list be an hour or two long. But needless to say, he gets accused of a crime that he did not commit, and he comes back, and he's pretty much saying, if it hadn't been for you three, the main characters, I still would have been in prison. So I just want to say thanks. And they're in this huge hall. This is in Hogwarts. This is a boarding school, so it's this huge hall that I'd say it's about the size of a cathedral. Just that hall, which gives you an idea of how huge Hogwarts is. Wow. Anyway, after you hear him say thanks, Harry says to him, "There's no Hogwarts without you." And from that moment on, I'm pretty much crying, but it just keeps building. I mean, he hugs him, then Harry's friends, Ron and Hermione, hug him. And then you hear clapping from everyone. You hear clapping from the headmaster of the school. And then everybody starts clapping, everybody starts cheering, and you see this face from Hagrid that said, "I had no idea that I meant this much to you." Even his enemies, or the closest thing the school has, the Slytherin house, even his enemies are compelled to cheer for him. That's how much he was loved. And it makes me cry every time. Now moving on to the first, but not the last, TV related thing on here. And that is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And this episode, it's always made me cry. There are certain parts of this show that have on and off made me cry. Always consistently, this one just breaks me down. And that is the episode of Buffy. I believe it is I know it's season 5, but I believe it's season 5, episode 16. It's called The Body, and it's where a character who you just love up until that point, this character named Joyce, it's Buffy's mother, she just dies. I mean, in the last part of in the last, I'd say 15 seconds of the episode previous, you see her just lying there, just in a mess. It looks like she just collapsed halfway onto the couch, and her eyes aren't blinking. And the whole next episode is just, it's sadly beautiful, I guess is the best way, because it perfectly gets what grief is. It's disorienting, it's sudden, and no matter where you come from in life, it shakes you. In this, like the first 10 seconds, you're just seeing her just try to get a handle on the situation, which, speaking with personal experience, you can't. You just can't. You're kidding yourself if you think. And there are parts of this episode that the tone perfectly gets how disorienting it can be. There's a part where she actually just throws up as a reaction to this. And that perfectly gets how, no matter who you are, and keep in mind, this is a person who up to this point has, one, died themselves, or died themselves, whatever the right grammar is, has sacrificed even her closest friends, even lovers, to save the world. This is a person who, if anybody could be, is prepared for dealing with death. And she throws up. She is reacting to her own mother's death so suddenly, after having her mother go through brain surgery to remove a tumor. You think everything's going to be all right, and then she just dies. And Buffy throws up because this is just a heart-wrenching thing. And even the people, there are some characters in this who are not actually human. They're what they call in the show ex-demons. They used to be demonic. And even that one person, that one being who has lived hundreds of years, can't get a grasp on death, and that really just punctuates how shaking death is. And I really, really applaud Joss Whedon for writing this episode. This was just so powerful. Thank you, Joss Whedon. Thank you. With that, we'll get to another one that is happy. In just a second. And that is one of my favorite series, movie series in this case, and that is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. See, I have always been a big Narnia fan. I've always respected Tolkien, but I've always just had a greater innate love for Narnia, and for Lewis's other work even. But in this case, Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Okay, so this is just a beautifully crafted film from start to finish. It looks beautiful. It's acted beautifully. And And there are actually a couple of moments in these movies that, in this one movie, that makes me cry. And the first moment is it's a scene where Edmund is fighting the White Witch. He has just cut off a part of her magic wand, which she has been using to turn all of the enemies they've been facing in battle. They've been in this huge uh, ultimate good versus ultimate evil stakes battle. And she has been using this magic wand to turn her enemies to stone. It has been a harsh military advantage on her side. And so he cuts it in half, stopping her from doing that. But they fight a little bit. It's barely a fight for her. And then she stabs him in the gut, is what I'm guessing. It's like, I think like right here or something. Right about there. It's not important, but it just shows you this is a movie that was intended for kids, but it doesn't shy away from the harsh stuff. I mean, she does gut him, essentially. And the second that happens, you see a reaction from Peter, his brother. And it just says, "Lady, you are dead. I will end you." And it goes off into this whole fight between the two of them. You can tell this is two experts fighting each other. And even though he's, I guess, around 16 or 17, he's been trained for the past couple of days at least to fight pretty well. And he has an obvious knack for it. And you can tell that if he weren't fighting against somebody who, one, came from a warrior race, and two, has been alive for hundreds of years, you'd get the sense he'd actually have a decent chance of beating her. I mean, he is just in a white-hot fury of, "You do not mess with me." And it just brings me to tears, because this is the relationship that I would have wanted with my brother. And unfortunately did not get the chance to have. And that is the first moment. The second moment in this movie that makes me cry is when they are walking down. I hate to say it because it makes it sound like a wedding. It's actually a coronation in this instance, but they're walking down the aisle to their dais, the platform that thrones are on. And you hear this triumphant music going, boom, 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 boom. And you get the struggle of all that has come before. You get the struggle of them seeing Edmund nearly die. A child, I'd say, is no older than 16, almost die. You see a struggle of them going from these uncertain preteens to maybe adults. Like young adult, maybe 16, 17, preteen to 17. Anyway, you see them go from unsure to, yeah, you can buy these kids becoming royalty. And it's just so beautifully done. I mean, it makes me cry every time. And last, before I forget this entirely, and there is one other scene. There's one other scene in this that makes me cry, and it's a very short scene. I think that's why I forgot it for a split second. and that is when the battle is about to start. They are surveying the enemy lines, they are surveying just the landscape of where they are, get an idea of what type of threat they're up against. And one of the mythical creatures, I'm guessing it's a griffin, but I'm not exactly sure. Something like maybe a griffin, maybe a giant eagle. It's really, really hard to tell. But he says something along the lines of, they're coming in numbers far greater than our own. And they basically say, numbers don't win a fight. I bet they help. Okay, basically, I'm now paraphrasing it. That's how well I know this movie. And the fact that it makes me cry is just a testament to how well this film is made. Anyway, there's a part where they're looking down at essentially what they think is going to be the Valley of the Shadow of Death, or the barrel of a gun, whatever idiom for almost certain death. They're looking down at it, and Peter is saying, "Are you with me?" And then his friend, I'm pretty sure his name is Orpheus, or Aureus. He's a centaur, and the centaur says to him, "To the end." Peter says, "Are you with me?" And he says, "To the end." And they charge. That's just wow. Now, going on with the next one, and this is once again another complicated emotion, and that is for the Prince Caspian movie. There are, if I recall right, because keep in mind that there are parts of these movies that there's always a consistency to some of them, but sometimes other parts of this movie make me cry. The two consistent parts are, one, and this actually just makes me cry, it makes me laugh, but it makes me cry because I'm laughing so hard, and in like a, oh, that's cute sort of way. There's this part in Prince Caspian where, for hundreds of years, these children have, at least not by Narnian time, been around for hundreds of years. They are coming back to a place that they used to know, and there is essentially a procession of people holding swords above them to kind of create an archway. And it's a bunch of centaurs, and you see a little centaur kid. He's got to be at least, he's got to be, I'd say, 8 years old, 10 at the most. Just very, very young, and it's so very cute, him holding this sword. And the music swells at this moment. It's both beautiful and hilarious. Now the second part of this once again ties in with my brother's suicide, because the other part of this film that makes me cry is the part at the end where they play the song "The Call" by Regina Spektor. In that, you see, that song was attached to a video that was posted on Facebook of a montage of my brother's life, and it was beautiful. But ever since then, that part of the movie has always made me cry. It's made me laugh afterwards because there's a great joke at the end of that song. But yeah, always made me cry. Always. Um, it's just wow. It it does it gets me every time. Oh, sorry, this is longer than I've gone for these videos, as you well know. And this, it's honestly been the most emotionally draining, and I'm not even halfway done with the movies that have made me cry. Um, the next part is from Tolkien's universe. It's from Lord of the Rings. And I'm going to address these all as kind of one. Um, I'm just going to address it that way because, yeah, there's one part, at least one part in every one of these movies that it makes me cry. Um, and we'll start off with the Fellowship. Okay, in the Fellowship, it's always one scene. Sometimes it's two. The one scene that always makes me cry in this is the scene at the very end where Sam is about to drown because he's just trying to follow Frodo, his friend. He dearly, dearly loves him. And after Frodo rescues him, he says, "I've made a promise, Mr. Bilbo. I mean, Mr. Frodo. I made a promise, Mr. Frodo, a promise. Don't you go leave him, Samwise Gamgee. I don't mean to. I don't mean to." And it just gets me every time. That is one of the most beautiful showings of a friend's love for a friend I've seen in a movie. And it's actually only topped by another part in this list. And yeah, going on with Two Towers before I get too focused on that one. In Two Towers, it's the grave scene with I believe his name is King Eomer. Yeah, this is a very complicated universe. You will, I can almost guarantee that you will love this series, but you are gonna have a hard time with the names on this. I mean, I've known about these for years, and I'm still having a hard time with these names. I believe it's King Eomer. Eomer is grieving over the death of his son, which in a way he has indirectly caused. He has caused it by his inaction, because he had been up to that point manipulated by a character named Grima Wormtongue. And so in a way, it's almost directly his fault that his son died. And he gives this little eulogy saying, no father should have to see the death of their son. No father should have to bury his son. And the third, and with the third and final movie, it actually makes me cry twice. Oh wait, no, 3 times. Yeah, sorry, a hard time deciding on the off the cuff whether I'd count that, but yeah. The first part that makes me cry in Return of the King is there's this scene where they're saying, "I never thought I'd die side by side with an elf." And then the elf, Legolas, says to the dwarf, Gimli, "How about dying side by side with a friend?" I could do that. And you feel such passion. That actually takes, I'd say, the number 2 spot for best way I can describe is brotherly love. Think the most intense love that you see between two people in any rom-com or any romantic epic, just a star-crossed lovers type of love that you see everywhere. But imagine it being applied, that intensity being applied to a friendship. This takes the number 2 spot on the list of honestly the best examples of that type of friendship, of the I will die for you friendship. And it's only topped by the next thing that I will mention, and that is the scene where um, where they said, I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you. Come on! And that is when Sam is carrying Frodo up Mount Doom, which, on retrospect of reading the books and of seeing these movies, I'm not one of those people who heavily criticizes a movie for not sticking to its source material, but on this one case, I think I will, and that's because you don't truly get the impact of how big of a struggle this would be for Sam. Because in the books, they establish that they have been trudging through Mount Doom, essentially the inside of a volcano stretching from east to west. Yeah, about that big of a land, that they have been walking across it for a week. No food, no water. They can't even remember what life outside this hell is. And he is lifting another person up and saying, I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you. Come on. And carries him the rest of the way. That is love. And that is just, it's just beautiful. And the third part that makes me cry every time. It's honestly, it's kind of the one that makes me cry the least. But I think, it does make me cry because it's complex. It involves you getting involved with these characters. And that part that makes me cry is when Frodo is leaving. And once again, unlike the book, you don't get a definitive answer on whether he's going to see these friends again. And they're saying, no, you can't leave. And he says, we did what we set out to do. The Shire's been saved, but not for me. That just breaks my heart. And for that reason, it's on this list. The next part will come from more of a much more surprising area, and that is from this little movie, or big movie. I don't know whether it was exactly hyped up. I just know it was hated for some reason. I mean, I get the reasons, but I completely disagree. And this next movie that makes me cry is the movie Zoom. And it's for a couple of reasons. One, at the very heart of this story, is just the love that a brother has for another brother. And in fact, like my own case, it's my older brother. Or it's his older brother. And yeah, you know what I mean. It's his older brother. My brother that died was my older brother. And This part makes me cry every time because they really do, despite the fact that Tim Allen is playing the younger brother and a guy named Kevin Zegers, who is like, I'd say, a good 20 to 25 years younger, you still buy that dynamic of, yes, this is a person, this younger person is actually the older brother of Tim Allen. You innately buy it. Just when they start talking again, they sound exactly like what brothers sound like when they argue. They call on parental authority. I mean, like, for instance, this character who is the older brother, his name is Connor, and he says to Tim Allen's character Jack, he calls him Jackie, and he says, and Jack says, "What did Mom say about calling me Jackie?" Yeah, you just buy that instantly. So the part that makes me cry about this is the montage that has just happened right after it's been revealed that the person essentially that he thought he had killed at a earlier point in time, that the person he thought he had killed was his brother. I mean, it's legendary in this world that he had killed a certain person or had gotten rid of. It wasn't made exactly clear whether he had died, but that was the idea, that this character had died, and it's just been revealed that it was his brother. And they play the song, "It's Not Easy to Be Me." I think it's, I can't honestly remember. I think it's "Fight for Fighting," but don't quote me on that. It's I like the song regardless of it being in this movie, but it just really cements the point of how hard it can be having power, and as Spider-Man might say, having great responsibility. And honestly, I can relate so much to Tim Holland's character in this. And that's why it's on this list. I really, really recommend this movie. It has some stars that would, um, honestly, some of these stars would not be stars for much longer. Some of them, it's really surprising because, like, one of them is a House of Cards alum, so it's really surprising seeing her in a superhero movie made before superhero movies were popular. But this is a really great movie, and it makes me cry. So with that, we will have this be a two-parter, considering that this has gone on for a good 40 minutes, and I am emotionally spent. So until next time, don't be afraid to join the herd. Yeah, herd.